All right, guys, I think we're now live on the Northview site. I want to welcome everybody to our Wednesday night conversations with Cougars. And I have a very special guest, Twyla Williams, with us this evening. We've been chatting for a little bit. Twyla, it's good to see you. And thank you for having some time for us tonight.
Well, thank you. It's nice to be here and talk about my love for the Cougars.
Absolutely. And I think tonight may be a good escape for a lot of people. Before we jump in, there's so many of you living down on the Gulf Coast, the southern half of Alabama, the panhandle, Florida, Alabama panhandle, who've been affected by Hurricane Sally and the storm that's come through. So we certainly hope you guys are safe and sound, have power, coffee, whatever it is you need to get through. And just wanted you guys to know that we're thinking about y'all this evening as we talk with Twyla. Guys, if you don't know Twyla, you probably weren't at the school for a while because she was there almost 30 years at the school, beginning in the early 90s up until this past year. And I can't even begin to tell you all of the different organizations that she and her husband and her daughter all have held, whether it's teaching or organizing or volunteering. My gosh, the Williams have done it and have done it proudly. And gosh, we owe a huge amount of gratitude to the family. Both children went to school at Northview in the early 2000s. But Twyla, I want to, before we jump into all that good stuff, tell us a little bit about your family background and how is it that you ended up at Northview in the early 90s?
Well, let's see. I grew up in Montgomery. Went to a private school. Met my husband in college. We got married. Lived in North Alabama for a few years, and then his job brought us to Dothan. He worked at Southeast Alabama Medical Center for over 30 years, almost 30 years. And I had worked out at Wallace College when we first moved here and was pregnant with my daughter and worked year round and some nights and had a friend that was involved in the school system and she was the one that got me an interview.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've got an interview to work at Northview, which I was excited because I would be off summers with my kids and when they were out of school. So I worked in the guidance office and just loved it. Those were some great years. I worked with Shirley C. and I enjoyed her conversation with the Cougars and just was there for a few years. And my husband had a job change, so I was able to quit and just start substituting.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I've done at Northview for the past 20 something years.
Yeah, that's
But
not all that you've done,
well,
but that's what I guess you were paid to do.
right.
Uh, Now, who do you remember? Who did you interview with when
I
you
do. It
first
was
were applying for the job?
I interviewed with Phil Hardy and Mr. Atkins, Gary Atkins,
Mhm.
and they hired me, and I was really excited to work there. I enjoyed the students. They were just so much fun. They come into guidance, some, with problems, and I had aides, which I loved my aides there, and I used to put pictures up on the wall behind me, and they call it their little wall of fame. But I even still have a lot of those pictures of kids when they're prom.
Any former students who were involved with the football program as your aides, whether they were in band, cheer, or ball players?
Well, Bo Gross was
Hmm.
one that I got to know, and he was older than Gabe, but I kind of knew Gabe when I was substituting. But Bo was one I remember real well, and oh gosh, I can't remember all the football players. I think Chris Hart might have been one. He was right outside the office were the Cougar reps, and I
Hmm.
got to know them a lot, and because they would come into guidance a good bit. But I was busy those years. We had a good football team,
Hmm.
and a lot of colleges were coming in. The coaches were wanting copies of transcripts, and it was a busy time. I think we were ranked and went to playoffs. That was back during the Kennard
Well,
years.
I was going to say Skibo Whitcomb was our coach 91 and 92.
Okay.
And then Coach Kennard came in 93 to 97, which then led to Coach Latta, 90 08 to 01. But then by 2000, you started having children come through the program.
I did. My son started in 2000 and he played football, basketball, and baseball. And so, it was just year-round sports with him. And he decided after his sophomore year to just focus on baseball. But during that time, I was involved with the PTO and the Booster Club. So we enjoyed supporting in a lot of different ways.
Well, before your children came over to the school, was there any doubt you had gone to a private school, you said, in Montgomery? I'm not sure about your husband during those years, but was there any doubt that your children would come to Northview, come to the big public high school?
After working there, I loved the school. It was great people, great students, great teachers. So there was really no doubt. My kids had been involved in public school here in Dothan. The schools were great when they were in school. And so there was no doubt. And my daughter, when she was 3, she started being a Cougarette with the band. She was best friends with the band director, Tim Gilley's daughter. And so for years, they did the
Oh,
little
that's
twirling
great.
at halftime.
That's great.
And my son, I remember I can't remember his name. There was a football player my son particularly liked. He was his Camp Choctaw
Hmm.
counselor, Roderick. Anyways, so we went to the games from the time I worked there to now. We still go to the games, or well, the Dothan games.
Sure.
But we,
I I know that back in the time my brothers and I were at the school, gosh, from 82 through, when did David graduate? 93 or 94.
I remember David
And
in there.
and all during that time period, the bread company on the other side of the park, other side of the stadium, was always in operation.
Yeah.
And I'm sure parents and kids alike all went over there either before the game or at halftime to go get the awesome, warm, newly put out bread. That's just one of the unique things I've always remembered about the stadium and those Friday nights.
I remember the smell. Oh my goodness, the
Yeah,
smell
well,
of
that's
the bread.
absolutely.
Ooh, was
It
that?
wasn't a 200-yard walk
Yeah.
to the stadium. I mean, to the bread manufacturing company. Well, who was your principal when you said you interviewed with Mr. Hardy, but was he the principal at the time?
He was. Phil Hardy was the principal. Gary Atkins was an assistant.
Mhm.
Gip Kingery was over attendance, and Willie Brown was discipline.
Oh,
And
sure.
they were 4 amazing
Mhm.
principals. When Mr. Brown left, he transferred or was promoted to principal at Wilson Street.
Mhm.
And I was still at Northview, and I was so sad for him to leave Northview. But my son was starting 3rd grade at Wilson Street,
Mhm.
so he became his principal. So a lot of admiration for him. And
Excellent.
yeah.
Excellent. Well, talk about before your children got to the school, and you didn't have a child on the field, but you had many children on the field who you knew and cared for, obviously during the school week. What was it like knowing that maybe one day your children would come through the program, but for now you're rooting for your school where you work? How cool was that?
Oh, it was fun, and my kids love going to the games. Like I said, Haley twirling and Ryan watching the football and playing. And I remember when he was in middle school, there was a whole group of middle school kids would be up top on the right, and because all the high schoolers were way on the left,
Right, right,
sitting.
right.
But it was just kind of, they were brought up. They both have had a love for Northview
Mhm.
even before they started, and I think it made it really easy for them to go there, just because I had been there and they had been there numerous times for things.
Well,
So
by the time Ryan came through and was starting to dress out on Friday nights, where were your nerves at that on those nights compared to previous Friday nights?
well, when you have a child playing, there are a lot of nerves, a
Hmm.
lot of nerves. But I think the most exciting time for him was his 9th grade year.
Hmm.
He was, freshman team, but
Hmm.
they let him dress out for the playoff game. and got to go on the bus to, I think it was Fairhope. And we went down there, and that was just exciting for them. You know, they knew they weren't going to get on the field, but they were part of the team and they were there. And it was exciting. It was exciting.
So his freshman year would have been 2000
I believe
season.
so. Either
Yeah,
the
that was at Daphne.
Daphne, that was it. I knew it was down near Mobile,
It
Daphne.
was a 28-16 loss at Daphne that year.
Right.
But I bet that was a good experience. And you guys, just even having him on the sidelines, I bet was just a pretty cool experience after watching the games all those years. Was he a ball boy, or did he help with
No,
the coaches at all during the year?
I don't know. He never did that growing up. I think he knew some of the players. And I remember one time I had Bo and Gabe helped him with pitching one time. The Grosses took him out. And now my daughter, she was a ball girl for the soccer team when they first started girls soccer with Coach Bruner. She was about 10 years old, and she was a ball girl for the girls soccer team, which
It's,
was
they just didn't, when I was coming through in the 80s, just to show how old I am, there was so many sports that were missing for girls and so many other sports for both boys and girls that were in other parts of the state or in other states. Wrestling, softball, soccer, you could go on, now bowling, that there were so many opportunities, so many really for the school for girls. Tennis and basketball, I think, really were the two mainstays. Maybe golf. I know we had boys golf, but I don't know if we had girls golf at the time. And I'm just so pleased to see there's so many sports now that anybody can go out to represent their school and play their favorite sport.
Oh,
But
it's exciting. I mean, to look at even back when I worked there to now, like you
mhm,
said, bowling, swimming, Northview has had wonderful swimming program
mhm,
and some state championships with that too. But the soccer teams have grown even from when she was a ball girl to when she played. They just had one team, and now there are two teams. She's got a varsity and a JV.
mhm.
And then same with the boys. The boys for years had
Yeah.
one team, and now they've got two also. So.
Yeah, it was just if you didn't play the traditional major 3 or 4 sports, boys particularly, you had to go play rec or find a regional team to play whatever you wanted for that particular sport. Tell us a little bit about your experience with the Booster Club over the years. That's always, I remember when it was founded. I remember my parents being so active in it for years, and it was such a great extension of the program. So many of the parents and even parents whose children were older than us still remain active in it. And I don't know if they continued the tradition of having the Friday lunches with the captains over at one of the little steak places, but the Booster Club just did so many cool things that just supplemented and supported the football and later the other programs as well. But tell us about your experiences with that.
Oh, goodness. I started out as secretary when my son was there,
Mhm.
and we did do the Booster Club luncheons. I used to love to go. I had a sack of shakers, and we'd go sprinkle them out on the table and, try to have a little spirit. And they were always something great to look forward to. Even through Haley's years when she was there, I was still involved with Booster Club. My husband ended up being president for 2 years. And I laughed and said I was his first lady because he would do the meetings and then I did all of his behind the scene things. And those were the years that, goodness, we honored state championship teams,
Mhm.
because we knew how
Oh,
rare
yeah.
it was to win a state championship in
Mhm.
football. And so we brought the 82 and 85 teams back. And then something that was amazing was a night that when Wayne and Lisa Pierce, Wayne was the Booster Club president, we had a night of champions where
Mhm.
we brought back lots of the Northview greats and had a wonderful steak dinner at the Civic Center. And that was just an amazing Booster Club event. But believe it or not, I'm still on the Booster Club board. Um,
Emeritus. They're
I,
never going to let you go away.
I
You're
did
too
have a few
valuable.
years, well, a few years in there that I was not, but with my daughter back teaching and coaching, my husband was on it for a couple of years when she first came back because they wanted some soccer representation, girls soccer. And the last 2 years, I've been back on it, and it's still a wonderful organization. We work hard to raise money and support all the teams, all the programs that are there. And there are several people still on the board that don't have children at the school. Their kids have graduated, but they love the student athletes, and
Mhm.
we've kept them on.
Well, that's what was always just so genuine and so great about that organization. And I know Coach Parrish, who I played for, Coach Harry Wayne Parrish, he just so trusted and so relied upon the Booster Club doing fundraising and helping with school spirit when it needed it, or hey, we need this piece of equipment. Can we raise some money and those kind of things. Those are always things that I always observed that he knew he could count on. And the parents took great pride in it. I think they had as much fun with their organization as we did with the ball team at one point or another.
Oh, we did. We've had, like, so the years that I was on as secretary, and then with my husband, I guess it was about 8 years through there that when the kids were in school, we stayed on because it was a great way to be involved at the school and support the school and the athletes. And it was just, we had great parents all those years that worked hard. And one of my best friends is one that I've made, the Ziegenfelders,
Mm-hmm.
their kids played.
Sure.
We got to be best friends through ball through all the years.
It's how art imitates life. I'm sure you've seen either the movie or the TV program of Friday Night Lights. Remember the TV? Remember the show?
Oh yeah.
And there's several times where there's scenes where the dads or the I'm going to call them the elders of the program are all at a steak restaurant or something, and they're all sitting around and critiquing this and critiquing that, and then the coach comes in and he's on the hot seat, and there's a question or two or three about why are you doing this and why are you doing that. And I'm sure over the years, some versions of that with the different head coaches have occurred with our program. And that, in my, in my opinion, would be one of the least desirable places for a head coach to have to sit down to answer to all these dads and these I'll call them the weekday coaches who know this guy should be playing fullback or why is he kicking. I could not imagine at one of those booster club lunches when the ball players go back to school because I got to go back to class, but the coaches are to stick around for a little while. And I guess my question, and I'm not asking you to name names or conversations, did you ever see those types of conversations?
Well, I think, those years, they don't do the luncheons anymore. I'm not sure when that ended, but back during those years, it was a great opportunity. The coach would always come in and would speak and would introduce the players and the cheerleaders. But the one thing I remember most of those years, Morris Slingluff.
Mm-hmm.
Morris
Oh,
stayed a
oh, he
Cougar
loved it.
fan.
He
Oh,
loved
yes.
it.
And he would always ask a question, but most of the questions when we were there were more congenial. The coach would kind of talk about the game before the game,
Right.
that night. And but Morris would always have some really nice question to ask or
Mm-hmm.
something. He was just very uplifting. But
Well,
he would usually be at those luncheons and ask a question.
never doubt the passion and frankly the level of knowledge of the sport. But there's only one head coach, and he's the one who's got to answer for things. But guys, we're having a great conversation with Twyla Williams. I want to welcome Elaine Woods Johnson, Shirley C., Amanda Smith, Jason Mullins. All say hello to you, Twyla, with some great comments. So
Oh,
thank you guys. Jared Andrews was just here.
yeah.
Ellery Corbin Cartagena. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name incorrectly, Ellery.
Let
But
me tell you a little story about Ellery. When my daughter's soccer team, she played soccer at and was a cheerleader at Northview. And when my daughter's soccer team made it to Huntsville, I can't remember if it was the first or
Mhm.
second year, my husband worked with her mother. Anyway, Ellery came to that game in Huntsville. She lives up there now. And it meant the world to my daughter because my daughter had watched her play growing up. She was a little bit older. And the girls to have this Northview alumni soccer player to come to their Final Four game in Huntsville. So that was pretty exciting. We
How cool.
that was
Well,
neat. And Amanda Johnson was the cheerleader, and she was one of my office aides or Cougar reps. And
sure.
I've stayed in touch with her through the years. She's a teacher in Dothan now and does wonderful things, has the son on the soccer team. So we get to see each other at soccer games. But, I still look back to when she was roaming the halls of
I
Northview.
was gonna say the time just flies by, I'm sure, for all of us.
Yeah.
Um, what was it about Northview and repping the school that made things special? Why, what made you proud, like when you had to go to Daphne or on the road for any sporting event or any academic conference? What was it about Northview that just made you proud to wear those colors and have that on your resume and your clothing?
Well, I think a lot of it was, working there and getting to know so many of the teachers. And I worked with Elaine Johnson in the guidance office, but and Shirley C. We were secretaries together. I was a clerk, she was a secretary. But, just knowing the people and then the kids, the students that were there. We had such good students that went on to do wonderful things in life. And that was just always what I loved, seeing how they were little awkward kids and then they grew up and doing great things in life. And I don't know, just the family atmosphere there, I guess. And then once you start cheering for them and supporting, it just kind of gets in your blood. And like I said, we've just done it for 28 years now. So
Well, it's easy to say this, but I think some of this, what I'm about to say, is true. Each preceding generation, life is a little bit simpler than the next one. Obviously, when I was growing up and went through the Dothan City schools, there was no internet, there was no phones. Nothing, none of that technology was part of anybody's life. That was light years, many years away.
mhm.
And one of the things that's always intrigued me is the mindset of the student athlete and how it's evolved, because now we're in a instantaneous gratification world. I post something, if I don't immediately get the likes and comments, it's going to, sour my day.
Mhm.
Well, now the student athletes, even in high school, are creating their brand. They see the LeBrons of the world. They see all these athletes who are so active with social media. It immediately it affects them. It trickles to them. So I'm getting to my question. When you started at Northview in the early to mid 90s, we were just getting into the age of personal computers. The internet came around a few years later. Then personal computers, then cell phones, etc. Then the internet just blew up. My question to you is, did you notice, and even with your own children, their development, the difference in the mindset of the student athlete? And I'm really focusing on the athlete part of this as the years went on. I certainly have from my perspective.
Oh, I think so, definitely. I think, back 15, 10, even, well, probably 15 to 20 years ago,
Mhm.
um, before a lot of the technology came along, students really gave 100% to their athletics, whatever sport it was. That was a focus. And now it seems like as video games and all those have gotten so big
Mhm.
that it's harder to get students or athletes to put in the time. There's more distractions. They want to play video games or, you know, social media, all that kind of stuff. And I think it's a big distraction. And kids that played sports growing up, sometimes when they hit about 16 and start driving,
Mhm.
they're just lot of distractions and they don't play. I think the participation numbers, I know in football have gone down some, and a
Oh,
lot of sports, they just don't want to practice and work as hard.
yeah, it didn't seem like it over the years. The numbers are not there because maybe the priorities have shifted. But I tell you, one superstar who came through Northview that did not have those distractions has just signed on with us, and he says to tell you hello. Kevin Jackson is with
I
us tonight.
love KJ. I love KJ. Great guy, great coach. Oh yeah, it's great
Yeah,
one.
Kevin, thank you for signing on for a few minutes. But it's so true. You'll again, art may imitate life or vice versa. You'll see in a movie or in a 30-minute Netflix show where a wide receiver makes a great play in a game and immediately runs to the sideline where somebody's got a camera. Did you get that? We got to put it, got to get it on tape. Could you imagine back in the day? What would Coach Latta, what would Coach Kennard think of something like that? There wouldn't be
It,
much playing time, I think, after that.
oh, I think they would jerk a knot at them. Some kids today seem to be more focused on a highlight reel than the
Mhm,
team concept. They've got to realize you're not playing just for yourself. You're playing for, your whole team.
mhm.
Whether it's, I know this is football, but a lot of what we focus on now is a different football, which is the soccer because
Yeah,
of my daughter.
yeah.
And she stresses team. You're not just playing for yourself or your position. It works together when you're playing as a team.
Well,
So,
talk about. I know you're very close with your daughter, and you follow and support her soccer program. How has she had to deal with things like that? Has she had to bring discipline? Has she had to coach the modern athlete? And I'm not trying to dump on the younger generation at all. And it would be very easy to call them soft. It would be or have that very short goldfish attention span. But I'm not doing that. I'm specifically not doing that because that would be too big of a generalization. But I know the current. I would not want to be a current coach. As much as you want to discipline and be old school or how you were brought up, I think the modern student athlete has a different mindset for the most part.
I think they do, but one thing she does is she sets high expectations and she sets it from the get-go. Every year when she has a parent-student meeting, she sets those expectations and she warns them about social media and cell phones are not brought out at practices. And I mean, there are just a lot of rules and expectations. And if they violate those, then a lot of times they're running. They may be
Well,
running. They might be running some hills.
well, I was going to say, as long as there are, if the athlete knows there's consequence to actions when they break a rule, it's when those lines get blurred, or if a coach wants to be the buddy or the friend of the athlete, it really has to be that line of demarcation. And I think the best coaches are able to do that. But even when they do that, it doesn't mean that their season on the scoreboard is going to be as good as they want it to be. There's many other factors here, but let me kind of pivot for a second and let's go into the mindset of being a parent whose children played sports while they were attending Northview.
Okay.
We're not always going to go undefeated. In fact, your son came through in a time period that many would say is the well, was the longest losing streak in the school's history. And for years, it just was not going in the right direction.
Well,
How did you guys, as parents, as supporters of the program, as an employee of the school, how did you keep up the school spirit? Because this lasted over the course of more than almost 4 seasons.
it did. It was tough. The 0-39 streak was during my son's years there, and football a lot of times will set the tone of spirit for the school. A lot of times when you start off the year and football does good, so it was tough. I remember I made a lot of spirit signs, and I used to go put them out at ball games. Ball game days around the school.
Mhm.
Just the cheerleaders had to work really hard. And there were some great cheerleaders that were during his years. And it was tough. It kind of had morale down. I mean, I know the numbers on the football team got really low,
Mhm.
and it was a difficult time. I know that Haley, you want to turn around and say hello?
Hello.
Bernard was waving.
Good to see you.
She, with the bad weather, we told her to come over, so she's been over here
Sure.
today with school being out. But I think the cheerleaders had to work hard. The coaches of all the programs had to work hard, to try to keep the spirit up. Just with the constant losing. But the most exciting game I think I've ever been was the year that it was broken, which was my daughter's freshman year.
Well, that was the fall of '04. Coach Chip Harris had taken over the program.
Yeah.
Emery Latta had been the coach from '98 to '01. Coach Dubose had a less than memorable '02. Then Coach Boutwell had again a less than memorable '03. But the fall of '04, I'm going to let you set the scene and take us to the
Okay.
Opelika game.
Well, it was an exciting year for a lot of reasons. It was a new principal. Ron Snell had just come in as principal, great principal. And then Coach Harris was there. And it was actually 16 years ago tonight that Hurricane Ivan came through. And I think this was the night we were going to play the game or whatever. Anyway, it was postponed to October. And it was a Thursday night. I guess it was our off week or whatever, but it was a Thursday night. And I remember my daughter and the Ziegenfelder, Jane and I, we were going to the game on a Thursday night. A lot of kids weren't there. I think there was some test on Friday or whatever. Anyway, got to the game and, it started out not a big crowd, but as we were playing well and holding Opelika, the stands started filling up and it was just an excitement. We won 10-3 on a Thursday night, and I think even Gabe Gross was at that game, if I remember correctly. But you know, the the fans rushed the field. They were all warned not to tear down the goalpost, but rushed the field. It was this huge celebration because this big burden had been lifted, and it was so exciting that they let the students go to the school afterwards, opened the gym, and had like a little dance party for them. And a bunch of us parents were all there. The next day at school, they let the football players come in late. They got to school. Mr. Snell canceled all the tests, said no tests today. It was a day of celebration. They showed the game on TVs all day and let the students watch it. The players came in. They had a big like parade for them in the commons area, welcome them to the school. I think they got to come in like 9 or 10 o'clock. They got to sleep in a little because it was such a big Thursday night.
Well, as you're talking, Twyla, I'm going to share the screen
Okay.
and show some of from the yearbook what you're talking about. So keep telling us what happened that day.
Oh my goodness. Like I said, it was just, 0 and 39. And there were jokes all the years of me being 0 and 30 and, things like that. But it was just, and to be a Thursday night because they did have that celebration on Friday at school for all the students. If it had been a Friday night, by Monday it would have kind of,
Right.
but that Friday, Ron Snell just let them bask in the glory of the win. And
Oh,
you would have thought we would have won a state championship. It was that exciting and that big.
well, I'm looking at some of the pictures of the students on the field.
Yeah.
And let's see, let me go back. Here's the students in the stands. It looked like they rolled some trees with toilet paper.
Oh, that became a big tradition, at Northview, rolling the trees. The seniors do it now at the beginning of school, at the end of school, but they roll the trees, the RIP signs. I mean, it was like I said, it was almost like winning a state championship.
Oh, look,
People were
you
crying.
got kids crying.
I mean, my daughter to this day still has a piece of paper from one of the signs after the game. She ripped a piece of one of the spirit signs, wrote the score on it, and I think she still has it to this day. I mean, it
Oh,
was,
wow.
like I said, it was like a state championship.
And it just, it helped to restore that school spirit that I bet had been lacking for a while.
It did. Like I said, the morale had gone down in a lot of the sports, those previous years. But it came back, and that was an exciting night, very memorable for both of us.
Well, and then that it really helped Coach Chip Harris the next year. They won 5 games, and just I guess it just helped to propel the school back to, so with the football standpoint, back to some where there was expectations of winning again.
All right. Well, one of my daughter's classmates, Spencer Pybus,
Hmm.
graduated and played at Auburn.
Hmm.
So it did help. And that was always exciting when Northview kids went on to play. We had fun watching Gabe Gross and at Auburn, and anyway, I'm an Auburn fan. So anytime the boys went to Auburn, it was fun to cheer them.
Yeah, that's, with Northview being a 6A, a large school in the southeast part of the state, and having the success it did in the early parts of the program in the late 70s, early 80s, and into the 90s, it really put our school on the map as far as recruiting
Hmm.
standpoint. I have no doubt that the Dothan High Wolves are going to be that way. Even now that the schools are combined, it's the only uh, public high school, I think, for the city of Dothan, and being a 7A school, probably one of the 10 or 15 largest student bodies in the state from a high school standpoint. So I'm sure the winning ways, if they're not there yet, they're on their way. I know they had a tough game maybe this last week, but I'm sure that they will. Well, let's keep coming forward, and I want to, guys, if you don't know who I'm talking with, you really should. You don't know your Northview history. Twyla Williams. Oh, I want to welcome Janaski Fleming. Coach Fleming has joined us. Thank you, Janaski. Hope you're doing well, my friend.
But and Coach Fleming was my daughter's basketball coach, and helped her get a college scholarship to play basketball. So we've loved Janaski Fleming, his family for many years, many
I,
years.
I don't know if you got to see him back in his prime as an athlete, but he was one of the best athletes I saw in the city of Dothan over the years.
I've heard, and he went on to play at Troy.
He
So
did. He did. Special player. Well, Twyla, let's your children graduate. Your daughter graduated in '08, but you still remained with the school in one capacity or another for more than another decade.
well, when she graduated, it was empty nest, and I was actually secretary of the Dothan Education Foundation, and we were working to support Dothan City Schools, and so we started a campaign called Yes We Can Dothan, and we brought in some Mobile had that program and brought them into Dothan to try to get community support built back up for the schools, and they hired me as the director of communications. So for 5 years, not only did I support Northview, but all Dothan City schools. We worked really hard to promote the schools, their good news. We worked hard with the community to be the community's voice, and to help solve problems and work with the superintendent, work with the principals, and worked really hard. And during those 5 years, it was exciting because enrollment increased, dropout rate, was got much better, and it was some good years. We had test scores on the rise, so those were 5 more years. And then when my daughter came back to Dothan, she was hired at Northview as a math teacher and assistant basketball coach, and she was given the soccer program. She had played soccer at Northview also. So then I kind of took on the role of helping her, because being a math teacher, she didn't have a lot of time to do a lot of things. So I'm sorry. This is our new little rescue dog that has just joined me. This is Puppy.
Excellent.
But anyway, so I became, as my husband calls me, her administrative assistant. And as the girls call me, I'm kind of the team grandma.
That's
But
awesome to have. I know that your daughter loved that support.
well,
It,
I enjoy it. I've helped raise money, get sponsors for them, bake cookies for them, and sometimes I'm her other set of eyes if she needs. And I work the admission gate because it has to be a Dothan City School employee to help do that. So,
sure.
uh,
Well, I know it's been a labor of love all these years. And if there's a way to, it's hard in a conversation that is 30 to 45 minutes long to properly convey all your feelings. I know that. And in this, I guess what I want to ask you is how do you tell parents whose children are just now going through the high school experience? They're just getting involved with Dothan High Wolves, and they really just don't know what to expect. One, my first question is, what do you suggest to them how to support the program or how to get involved in the program? That'll be
well,
the first question.
I think the first thing, a lot of parents think that when their kids get to high school that they don't need them or want them, but the schools need the parents, whether it's joining, a booster club or whatever. But I think, parents need to stay involved with their kids. And I think for the students, they need to be involved. They need to walk away from video games. They need to find whether it's bowling, tennis, golf, football, basketball, soccer, volleyball. There's so many opportunities, swimming, for students to participate and, have that bond with other athletes and coaches. And I think it's just important to be involved in the clubs. There's so many wonderful clubs that, I hate when students get to high school and they're not involved. They need to be involved.
It's amazing whether it's a sport or a club or civic organization, that sense of belonging just becomes just you being a member and then getting involved. You're so right, but you hit the nail on the head. It's I can remember, as I said, when my parents were involved in the booster club. I think my parents rotated different years. They were the president or whatever different um, whatever titles that they were needed for. Um, they really made it a sense of pride to include as many parents as they could. And if you go onto our Facebook group here, I've got a section, a unit that is titled, I think, Booster Club or Quarterback Club. And if you look at those rosters from the mid 80s, it's almost every parent whose child or children were coming through the school at the time. I mean, the list it was tremendous. And it is, the more that they can be involved with their children's sports and activities, that only helps the child, is what I'm hearing from you.
Oh, I agree. I think, well, it gives the parents an opportunity to be involved with the school, with the coaches, and with their child. And we've just always been involved parents. My husband and I both have taken pride in being at all the games and, and being involved with the booster club and PTO or whatever, because the school needs it. I mean, the students need it, the athletes need it, and whether it's, my daughter was involved with the band her senior year. And so I was a band booster. I worked at the Peanut Festival and the Southern Showcase. And I love those band parents. I made some great friends through the band
Can I
parents.
tell you how many of those funnel cakes I bought over the years from the band at the Peanut Festival?
I know.
Let me get you out of here in about 2 or 3 minutes, but I can't without a couple of more quick questions.
Sure.
What was your favorite time of the week at Northview? Whether it was a particular class, day of the week, activity?
I think, well, I've always loved going to the pep rallies, whether it was when I worked there, or whether it was when my children were there, because the pep rally Fridays were fun. But the last couple of years, I've gone and my daughter has participated, and she and Coach Bright have danced at pep rallies the last couple of years, and
Excellent.
that's been a lot of fun.
I
But,
bet.
but I love those pep rallies,
Well, I was just, you just led me to my next question. I don't know if you were ever around during Dr. Smith's tenure.
I was not, but his legacy, I used to hear don't meet me there, beat me there.
We
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 would talk about
actually, I recently found tape from a pep rally of him doing that, and I'm going to try to splice it down to where it's just that part, and I'll post it the upcoming days. But was there ever anything, any tradition like that that you saw or participated in that could even be matched or
that.
anything close to what he used to do? Because I'll tell you, his poem would end our pep rallies.
That's what I
The
heard.
students would recite with him and back to him the end of it, and that the band would play, and that would send everybody out of the gym on a big high. And oh my gosh, if that didn't get you fired up, full of school spirit, nothing could.
Well, we heard about those years. Oh gosh, but you know, I loved it when the teachers made the students learn the alma mater
Mhm.
because they would end, all arm in arm, swaying, singing. And there were years that the English teachers, I think it was ninth grade, my kids both had tests and had to learn the alma mater, and
Oh
they
wow.
would sing it and they knew the words. And then they went through some years where I think the students didn't have to learn it, so they didn't know it. But I always thought it was important for them, and that was the way they ended the pep rallies through my kids' years, and I guess through the end of they may even still do it now with Dothan High, but ending with the alma mater, arm in arm, swaying, singing, and
Yeah,
you
that's a very cool tradition.
know.
That's I
Well, and
hope.
I used to love. I don't know if it was during your years,
Mhm.
but during my kids' years, the band would always play what was Sweet Sweet Sound. Anyway, they would always play at the end of the football game. The football players would come over to the band and take a knee, and the band would play this song. And they did that. I think that was through the Tim Gilley years. And after football games, win or lose, that was an exciting time on the field.
Yeah, Mr. Christian was the band leader, and Mr. Gilly was the assistant during my years. And I do remember the fight song and the alma mater. I don't remember. I don't know if it was a thing back in my day where the team would come back out to the fans and interact with the cheerleaders and band. Every era is a little bit different.
Mhm.
But Twyla, I want to thank you for such a fun conversation and a trip down memory lane, and you sharing us a little bit of your experiences of what it's been like to be part of the Northview program for almost 30 years.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed it, and I guess it just kind of got in my blood and just never got out. And now it's still in it. It's just fun to get to know the kids and cheer and have the excitement of youth sports.
Well, there's guys, there's not many people like Twyla, particularly in the Northview program, and we're so blessed to have had her for all those years. And just thank you for all that you did for so many children and so many student athletes and families over the years. And I just know that spirit is still there. And Twyla, thank you. I'm glad your family is safe. Hope that your loved ones are making it through okay in different parts of the Gulf South. And guys, thank you for spending some more time with us tonight.
And thank you, Bernard, for doing this and for keeping this group up because I know it's a lot of fun for a lot of people. So we thank you also.
Well, you're most welcome. But the secret I'll just share with you and no one else, it's more fun for me than anybody else because I get to have all these conversations every week and getting to meet all these neat people. Let's see, next week, guys. Let me see who's next on the agenda. I want to say it is my childhood friend and my sports hero at the time, and I don't know if he ever knew this, but guys, it's our next week is going to be Leo Butler. Leo was a quarterback 2 years ahead of me. I had the pleasure and the privilege of getting to play on baseball teams with him and football teams with him. And gosh, Leo's got a great story to share with us. So I am really looking forward to next Wednesday night as I do each week. But please be safe. If you're in those affected areas and you need help, just reach out to us, please. Somebody in the group probably lives nearby or can help out. But as always, guys, thank you again for another conversation with Cougars. Y'all have a good night.